I want to think about the words of that song that we just sang. Stand up for Jesus, ye soldiers of the cross. Lift high his royal banner, it must not suffer loss. And then I want you to look at the last stanza of the third verse. Where duty calls or danger, be never wanting there. The wise man of old said in Ecclesiastes, the 12th chapter and verse 12, and further be these, my son, be admonished. Of making many books there is no end, and much study is wearisome of the flesh. Notice verse 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. I'm going to look tonight at a lesson that it's not a new lesson, but it's the duty. You think about where duty calls or danger be, never wanting there. What is the Christian duty? For God shall bring every work, verse 14 of Ecclesiastes 12 to finish the text. For God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. I thought about the duty of man. What is our duty? The duty being that of a responsibility, that of an obligation. To fear God and keep his commandments, Burnell said. That's right. Paul wrote to the book of Corinth, in the book of Corinthians, about to the church at Corinth, correcting problems. And he says something, and this is going to be our text of the lesson. It's in 1 Corinthians, the 16th chapter, beginning there in verse 13. Watch, stand fast in the faith, be brave, be strong. Let all that you be done with love, or with charity, in the King James. We're going to take that verse, and I want you to think about those duties. What is my duty tonight as a Christian in this community? What is the duty that I have? The first one is the duty to watch, to be on guard, to be a watchman. We think about things that we want to look at and things that we want to look for. The first thing I want you to think about are words. The words that we use, the tone that we use them. We sing songs like angry words, or let them never from an unbridled tongue slip. We think about words of encouragement. Words. You know, the Bible talks about the use of the tongue and the deadly evil that it is there in the book of James. He talks about how the devil uses our tongue. We need to watch our words carefully. Is it words of edification? The Bible talks about we shall give an account for the words that we speak. Every idle word. You think about how many words we spoke today. How many words did we speak last week? Who heard those words? Were those words of truth? Were they words of idle talk? Were they words of demeanor? What were our words? This past week I had the privilege of attending a seminar put on by an educational specialist from Texas that said, those of you that drive school buses, the words that you use when you meet little Johnny in the morning may very possibly set his whole day. The tone that you greet him with. You can say, good morning, Johnny, or you say, good morning, Johnny. You know. And the lady was making the point about, she was specifically talking about those of us that set the tone. The title was capturing a kid's heart. And I'll give the credit to those who do that. It's a very, very interesting story. But the words that we use. Think about the words that we use and the way we use them. And I know I'm guilty of using words, using gestures, using inflection. Watch how we do that. And folks, watch our only Bible that some folks read. What if the type be blurred? What is our example? What does my spouse see me when I'm bad, when I hadn't had my coffee in the morning? Or I hadn't had my blood pressure medicine in the morning? You know, do I make her have a bad day? What about my coworkers? What about my customers? What about my friends? What about my brother in Christ? There's someone watching you at all times. There's another point that was made this week is there is somebody Little Eyes is watching Mr. Andy. And I don't know whether I'm just the gullible one that sat too close to the front, but she always picked on me. What do they see you be doing, Mr. Andy? And here again, this is probably not appropriate for the pulpit, but it made a point. She said, do they see you picking your nose? I looked at her. What? She said, do you pick your nose on the school bus? I said, no, I don't think I do. She said, well, if you saw Johnny picking your nose, his nose, would you tell him to use tissue? He just saw you pick your nose. And she made a point. And the point being, what a child sees, they emulate, and many times we get them in trouble. You know, we're not supposed to talk on a cell phone on a school bus. And this is another example she used. If I'm talking on my cell phone, and I tell little Johnny, Johnny, put up your phone, you can't talk on it. Miss Andy is talking on yours. They get to school and do the same thing, and I don't want to spend the whole time rehashing that seminar. But it's the example that we as adults set before children in the educational environment. And I got to thinking about that as I thought about this lesson. What can see me? What do I see Brenda doing? What do I see Burnell doing? The example that we said, we used it this morning. The Apostle Paul talking to Timothy, be thou an example to the believers. Be thou an example. Be thou an example. You never know who's watching you. And they know you especially Christians. What about this one? Watch for opportunities to teach. Last week's lesson, I used A plus O equals R, and Ricky repeated it this morning. Ability plus opportunity equals responsibility. The Apostle Paul said to the Church of Galatia, as we have opportunity, let us do good unto all men, especially to those in the household of faith. Sometimes we have to watch for the opportunity to serve others. Sometimes we have to watch the opportunity. We have to seek out the opportunity, if you would. We have to recognize the opportunity to help one another. You know, sometimes we say, oh, that's the elder's job. It is the elder's job. Sometimes it's the preacher's job. But it's all of our duty to know and to assist and to help our fellow man. Looking at practical duties, looking at practical opportunities. The whole duty of man is to fear God and keep his commandments. There's many commandments that we could talk about keeping. But I want you to think about watching these things. Our words, our examples, our opportunities to teach, and each other. You know, I don't know how many of you watch NBC Nightly News, but the anchor on it says something to this words: take care of yourself and everybody else as well. Take care of yourself and other people too. I don't know exactly his words. I forgot to write it down. But we need to look out for our fellow man. Now think about it. Are we fulfilling our duty? How many, now watch me carefully. How many people do we know that are lost? Probably know a lot, don't we? Some we won't reach. Some is not interested. I want you to, and here again, challenge you to do this. I want you to think of 5 people that you know is lost, that you might have opportunity to mention Christ to. You might draw their attention to a religious question. Watch other people. Watch each other. Seek the opportunity. And folks, the last one on the idea of watch is the return of the Master. We live our life like Jesus isn't coming. I know Paul wrote to the Church of Thessalonica and other places in the Scripture. They thought he was coming back in their lifetime. It's been 2,000 years. I think sometimes we as Christians, and I'm just guilty, we get wrapped up in our schedule saying, I know the Lord's coming. I believe the Lord's coming. But Miss Pat, it's going to be 40 years from now. He's coming in my kids' generation. He's coming in the year 3000. He's coming at some point in the future. Do you realize the opportunity for the Master could come? He could come tonight. We know not the hour. He could say, before I finish this sermon, time could be no more. We need to be, the duty to be prepared and to watch for the second coming of the Master. Watch, for you know not the hour. We hear those sermons. We understand those passages. We can read the text. He's coming later on. Now, what this is analysis, so take it for what it's worth. The second coming of the Master is as close as your last heartbeat. The second, I can die. Life is but a vapor, appear for a short time, and it vanishes away. My duty, my obligation to be a complete person, to be full. Watch. When Paul wrote the exhortation in 1 Corinthians 16, chapter verse 13, he said, watch. Watch what, Paul? Watch your attitude. Watch your actions. Watch your example. Watch the thing come to the Master. Are you being watchful? The duty of the watchful. Let a little bit further there, 1 Corinthians 16, no. Stand fast in the faith. Folks, I think that's a lesson we need today. Stand fast in the faith. Conviction, dedication. Our need to stand up and speak out in today's world. How many opportunities did we have this past week to think about morality or immorality or right versus wrong or justice versus injustice or fairness versus unfairness or unfairness? You think about Christian, I misspelled it on the chart. Christians need to stand up and speak out in today's world. Make a difference. Make a difference. If you see something, say something. If you see something, notify somebody. Do something. Here again, I think we have lulled ourselves into mediocrity. We have lulled ourselves into the average. I know what I need to do, and I know what Ricky needs to do, but I'll get around to it when I got time. I can't call Ricky late in the afternoon. He goes to bed early. He can't call me early in the morning because I don't get up. He gets up early before I do. Folks, we can make all kinds of excuses. I'm too busy. He's not home. He didn't answer the phone. I didn't have an appointment. You can find all kinds of excuses. But the point being, sometimes we need to stand up and speak up in today's world. You think about the injustice that's around us. You think about the prejudice that's around us. You think about the people that are hurting around us. You think about it. The opportunity to make a difference can sometimes simply be saying, hey, there's something wrong in the situation. Stand up, speak up, and be heard. In order to do that, you've got to have the knowledge of right and wrong. In order to stand up, you must be prepared. Let's go to Ephesians chapter 6. Turn me over to, we're going to spend a little time there in the book of that you be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. What's the wiles of the devil? I ask that sincerely. Put on the whole armor of God, you'll be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. Oh, we talk about, that's the temptations of the devil. That's the evils of the devil. How many injustice do we know about? How many acts do we know? Stand up. Folks, there's too many Christians, we want to sit down on the pew of apathy with our Bible after me. Oh, yes, he is. Oh, yes, he is. Sometimes we sit too long on the pew of apathy or mediocrity. We need to rise above the average. We need to say something, speak up, stand up, and he tells us exactly what to do. Stand fast in the Lord, in the faith. Jude verse 3, contend for the faith. Folks, you cannot contend unless you're active. A contender is one that is in the fight. A contender is one that's speaking up. A contender is one that is defending. A contender is one that's growing. A contender is not always a winner, but a contender is one that's fighting the good fight of faith. Fight the good fight of faith. Lay hold on eternal life. We hear those passages. We preach those passages. but do we apply those passages? The duty of man is to stand up and to stand fast in the Lord. Stand fast in the Lord. Let's stand fast on good things. I know we've read these, but I want you to think about them. You could use Philippians 4 in the first 7 verses of what it means, the duty of man. Let your gentleness be known, rejoice in the Lord, and other things, be anxious for nothing. But I want you to look at verse 8. And I want you to think about these things. Being positive-minded, being excelling, being above average. Finally, brethren, listen to Paul as he writes to, he loved the church at Philippi. They were special to the Apostle Paul, and he gave them advice. It's good. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are noble, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things of good report, if there is any virtue, and if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. The things which you learned, don't stop, read verse 9. The things which you learned and received and heard and saw in me, these do, and the God of peace will be with you. The whole duty of man is to stand up for God, to stand up in the faith, to contend for the faith which was once delivered. The faith, the system known as Christianity. In our world today, we hear the word Muslim, we hear the one atheism, we hear the word modernism. We see all kinds of isms out there. Catholicism and other things that oppose themselves to Christianity. We need to stand up and be counted worthy of the name Christian. Yes, it's going to cause some persecution. Yes, it will cause some people to talk about you. But let's make a difference. Stand on Christian virtue, truthfulness, honesty, integrity, morality. Let's rise above those. Now, let's go to Ephesians chapter 4. Our duty to grow up. Hebrew writer tells us that we have, in Hebrews the 5th chapter, you have neither one teach you again to be the first principles of the oracles of God. We've heard that passage, we can quote that passage, we can discuss that passage. But folks, there's too many babies in the Lord's church. There's too many babies in the Lord's army. There's too many immature people in the fight for righteousness. We need to enlist help. We need to grow up to become a man. Ephesians chapter 4. I used part of it this morning about the apostles and other things. But let's pick up in verse 13. Ephesians 4 and verse 13. Till we all come in the unity of the faith. Unified. When we stand as one against the devil. When we stand as one against sin. When we stand against one against immorality. What is the whole duty of man? To fear God and keep His commandments. Paul said, stand up and be watchful. Till we all come, back in Ephesians 4 verse 13, till we all come in the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to a perfect man, a complete man, a mature man, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, that we should no longer be children tossed to and fro and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by the trickery of men and the cunning craftiness of deceitful plottings, but speaking the truth in love, may grow up in all things to Himself who is the head, Christ. Folks, we need to become more Christ-like. Think about that. The whole duty of man, the Christian duty, is to grow up. Be a man. Be complete. Be mature. You cannot do that until you have applied the faith of the gospel. You cannot do that until you have studied to be approved of God. You cannot do that until you have prayed for God for wisdom, and God grants that wisdom. You cannot do that until you exercise it. Bodily exercise profiteth little. Remember that? We need to exercise ourselves towards godliness. Grow up. Become complete. Notice verse 16. For whom the whole body joined in together by what every joint supplieth, according to the effective working by which every part does its share. I want to ask you a question. Is Andy doing his share? God knows. Are you doing your share? The effective working by which every part does its share. What's it do? I'm in Ephesians 4 and verse 16. Causes itself growth of the body for the edifying of itself in love. We need to understand that. Go with me to 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Now, I understand the context of that. He's talking about the spiritual gifts, and he's talking about the greatest gift of love, and all of these things. But I want you to notice verse 11 through 13. I'm in 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter. After he's talked about all the ideas of love never fails, and love bears all things, and believes all things, and suffers all things, and the ability of love. That's the context of 1 Corinthians 13. Pick up your reading, though, in verse 9. For we know in part, we prophesy in part, but when I understood as a child, I thought as a child. I spake like a child, I understood like a child, and I thought as a child. You cannot expect a child to have the maturity of an adult until they have had the opportunity to grow to adulthood. Now make that point clear. You cannot expect a child to act and be an adult until he has had the opportunity to grow to adulthood, to mature in the model of becoming an adult. Same thing is true as a Christian. Paul said, I thought like a child, I acted like a child, I was a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. The immaturity, put it away. The humor, put it away. The childish acting, to do those things. You expect that from a child sometimes. If they don't get their way, you expect a child to pout or to cry or to act out or to lash out or do something. That's expected of a child. Folks, we're Christians, and we're talking about the whole duty of man, the Christian duty. Stand up and be watchful and grow up. Preachers, we need to grow up. We need to toughen up. Elders, we need to toughen up. Christian teachers, we need to expect more. I'm not going to get all that. Yeah, I am. We're small, and I'm going to take a sidebar there. Parents and those of us that teach Bible class, do we expect people to prepare for Bible class? I had a preacher one time ask me that. I was talking about Bible. Do we expect people in Bible class to prepare for Bible class? If nothing else, read the chapter. I was taking a class out here at Northwestern. It's a 500 level accounting class. And I had a young lady in the class, and I was taking it after I bought the flower shop. I didn't need it for elective. I was taking it for the educational purposes of taxation and other things. And we had this young lady in the class. She would not even read the assignment, let alone do the assignment. She wouldn't even read the chapter headings. And she would come to class and expect the professor to waste most of the time answering questions that was answered in the headings of the chapter. And of course, that's been several years ago, and I don't regret doing it. That went on for 3 or 4 weeks. Those of us that was wanting to take the class and had paid our money to take the class to get the education was being distracted because this one person was not preparing for the class, and the professor was afraid he'd get in trouble if he corrected her. That went on for several weeks, Sandy. I went in class one night, and I was having a bad day, and I turned around to that lady and I said, young lady, I'm here because I want to be here. I paid my money to Northwestern to take this class. And if you, whoever's paying your bills, apparently it's not you, if you'd read the chapters like you were assigned, you wouldn't be wasting the professor's time nor my time. And the whole class did this. The professor said, I'm glad you did that. He said, I've been wanting to do that since it started. You know, she was acting childish. Folks, do we do that as a Christian? We come to Bible class on Sunday morning, and we're in Luke chapter 21, and I believe verse 1 and 2 is where we're at next week, Ricky. Edgar, will you read Luke 21 before next Sunday? I hope you better, especially after tonight's lesson. You will now. What about Wednesday night? We're studying the minor prophets. Will you read? There's only 3 chapters in the book that we're in. Will you read them? Folks, it becomes more productive. Let me get off that hobby horse and let me get back to the lesson. We act like children and we want somebody to read for us, study for us, and act for us. That's not Christian maturity. He goes back, he talks about it, maturity, to put away childish things. When I was a child, I spake as a child. But now, 1 Corinthians 13:12. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know just as I'm also known. Now by the faith, hope, love, for these 3, but the greatest of these is love. If we're getting our to grow up and to mature into our Christian thinking, go to 1 Corinthians the 14th chapter. Do not be children in your understanding. However, in malice be babes, and in understanding be mature. Brother, do not be children in understanding. However, in malice be babes, and in understanding be mature. We need to mature in our way of thinking, in our way of acting, in our way of studying. Let's go back to the lesson. 1 Corinthians chapter 16, and there verse 13. Our duty to be strong. Folks, I need you to be strong. There's times when my faith grows weak. I need you to be strong. There's times when you need to be strong as parents, teachers, preachers, elders, members, husbands, wives. There's times when we need strength. And we need strength to see through the day. It's going to be okay. We're going to make it. We need a positive attitude. The duty to be strong. Our leaders. Let's go back to the book of Joshua. Because I added this point this afternoon to this lesson because I was sitting there thinking about an example of leadership. And I was thinking about someone that took courage. I've always liked Moses. Moses has always been a hero. But I was thinking about Joshua. Can you imagine having to follow a man like Moses? Can you imagine the skill set that it took Joshua to lead the people of God into the promised land? Go with me to Joshua chapter 1. Let's pick up in verse 6. Be strong and of good courage, for to this people you shall divide as an inheritance the land which I swore to the fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do all according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right hand or the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. You think about Joshua. Now, you think about the thrones of the people that come out of Israel. They've come out of Egypt. They've wandered 40 years. Moses has now died. He's dead on the mountainside. He got a new leader. His name is Joshua. How would you like? Could you have been strong like Joshua? Could you have been courageous like Joshua? Look at the warning that God gave him. You keep the commandments and the law to do all these laws. Joshua, don't you turn to the left. Don't you turn to the right. Joshua, don't you deviate from them. You know what you are to do. That you're going to have to be strong. You're going to be courageous. These people are going to try you. They're going to do just what Moses did. They did to Moses. They're going to do it to you. Verse 8. The book of the law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate in it day and night, that you may observe to do all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have good success. Now you think about leadership today. Can we lead like Joshua? Dare to be like Joshua. Dare to be courageous. Sometimes we have to do that. Let's go back to the lesson. 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 13. Watch, stand up. But then he says, the duty to love. Love must be the foundation of all that we do. Love is the mark of maturity. I've already used 1 Corinthians the 13th chapter. When all things will be done away with, the greatest of these is now by the faith, hope, and charity, and the greatest of these is love. We need that so much. Go into the first. Let's go to 1 John the 4th chapter. I know these are passages we hear about and we read about a lot, but I want you to think about them. Our duty to love. Love must be the foundation of all that we do. In 1 John chapter 4, in verse 7, Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God. And everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. He who does not love does not know God, for God is love. In this, the love of God was manifest towards us, that God had sent his only begotten Son into the world, that we might live through him. In this is love. Not that we love God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be the perpetuation, but that is the payment for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we ought also to love one another. No one has ever seen any time if we love one another, God abides in us, and his love has been perfected in us, or been made complete in us. By this we know that we're able to him, and he in us, because he's given us the Spirit. Let's get down to verse 17 of chapter 4. Love has been perfected among us in that we have boldness in the day of judgment, because as he is, so are we in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love. We love him because he first loved us. And then you skip down to 1 John chapter 5 and verse 3. For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not burdensome or grievous in the King James. They're not hard. Who is born of God overcomes the world, and this is the victory that overcomes the world, our faith. I want you to think about our duty to love. There's the closing question. Christian duties. Watch ye. Stand fast in the faith. Quit you like men. Be strong. Let all things be done with love or with charity. Are we fulfilling the duties as a Christian tonight? Said all those things to get to that question. Folks, we can all improve. I know I can. We can all become more Christ-like. We can love more. We can find more people to teach. The whole duty of man is to fear God and to keep his commandments, because judgment day is coming. Are you ready? If I can assist you tonight, someone making your life right with God, all things are ready. I realize in this audience, won't you come? As it says in the song, it's been selected.